many ways or many strategies to employ the trends or the current situations or the current problems as points for writing, and this I think improve and develop students performance well. Other solutions concerning the technical challenges, all of us know the pandemic. When we faced the pandemic, teachers and students were not prepared well. All of us faced some technical problems. So here we should give emphasis, or those who have decision makers at universities or whatever, administrators at educational institutions, should give more interests or emphasis in training, whether for training for students or for teachers. And there is a very, very important, and I think positive, it's a positive result, which is self-learning, or LLL, lifelong learning lifelong learning, which is depending on ourselves, or spending more time in learning ourselves without depending on the teachers or the formal learning or formal teachers. And I think the future, or the coming years, future education and sustainable education depends or requires lifelong learning and self-learning. This is one of the main features of sustainable education and future education. And as we know, or those who, I think one paper here related to SDGs, sustainable development, as we know, or for those who don't know, goal 4 in sustainable development, it changed from 2015 to 2030. It changed from quality of teaching to, and they added to, lifelong learning. From quality of teaching, it was before 2015, to lifelong learning and quality of teaching. This refers to the importance of lifelong learning. How can we promote lifelong learning among our students? How, even if we as professionals or specialists in educational fields, to be lifelong learners, because if teacher believes in lifelong learning, he can transfer this concept, or he can promote this concept among his students. And this is one of the promising, or one of the most important results of COVID-19, which helped in creating lifelong learning among our students. Okay. Blending learning strategy that should be used, which combines the face-to-face teaching with remote learning, preparing different learning material that be available for increasing funding for infrastructure, integrating global recent trends. And these global recent trends, one of the requirements of 21st century skills in teaching English. We should use these trends or these features for in our teaching to create 21st century skills students, and of course teachers. Guidance should be offered by staff members for students and their families who can't afford the internet budgets or costs of laptops. And these are the rules of also the rules of the university mentioned the coming result. Increasing, avoid assumptions about students' background and hold everyone to high expectations. Hotlines to provide psychological teaching and counseling support for all student teachers and parents. Services offered for both those who had trouble coping with the emotional and psychological impact of social isolation, and for parents who had additional homeschooling responsibilities. And I think this is the last. I think this is the last result. And I have followed. I think I'm the only one who followed the time. It's about 15 or I think 10 minutes. Thank you all, and last words for you, our support and our praise for Gaza people and free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Yes, free Palestine. We appreciate your presentation, Dr. Amal. And now Professor Hassan Hamada from ONS Constantine is going to present the positive and the negative aspects of the aftermath of COVID-19, looking back on deficiencies and exploring sustainable development opportunities. From an Algerian perspective, Prof. Hassan will be highlighting the Algerian educational system shifting from face-to-face learning to e-learning. Also, his study aims to explore the pedagogical, the psychological, and the social effect of the online learning in the university sphere. Prof. Hassan, you shall take the floor. Please share your PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Well, will you please give me the floor for sharing my...
Okay, 1 minute,
paper.
please.
I would like to first say that I appreciate listening to the previous speakers. A lot of information, especially Amal, with whom we have certainly share a number of experiences. Do you see my screen?
One minute, please. Yes, it's well apparent on the screen.
Is it?
Yes, it's clear enough, Professor Hassan Hamada.
Well, thank you very much. I would like first to thank the organizers of this international hybrid conference, and special thanks to people from abroad, from Europe, from India, from Asia and Africa. And I would also thank Dr. Amal for sharing the Egyptian context with us, which is not that different from the Algerian context, as we shall see. So this particular international conference of post-COVID is sometimes harmful for people who lost relatives, friends and neighbors during the COVID lockdown. But it's still an experience for humanity to learn from that experience and go on to see further perspectives. And so it is life, and so it goes. So may all of them rest in peace. And I would like to encourage all human beings to help each other and collaborate within better perspectives. My paper is entitled, sorry, The Positive and Negative Aspects of the Aftermath, looking back on deficiencies and exploring sustainable development opportunities, because we cannot just start from scratch. There is a past to the COVID-19 and during the COVID-19 and what we are practicing right now. So I will give a brief account of the experience we had before the COVID-19 and what happened during the COVID lockdown and the pedagogical shift to the online distance education or e-learning experience on the different platforms. So I will also describe the context and population of the study with all the contextual and technical dimensions, the pedagogical constraints or practices and benefits, the socio-affective and cost-effectiveness impact during the lockdown, and what the population of the study considered as an experience from which they developed some tendencies and perspectives. And I would end up with the rationale for a hybrid tendencies that my population of study expressed, with some arguments would lead us to some recommendations. So I would say that the Algerian universities have already hosted a network of e-learning platforms during the last 3 decades, let's say from the 1990s. And every institution had its hardware, software, equipment, and some professional staff. But the purpose used to be maintaining continuous education program for school leavers, professionals, and alumni, without really focusing on any particular content or dimension. And through this process of distance education network in the 90s, the school leavers and some middle school teachers who wanted some promotion with their low profile of general certificate secondary education and who went for the Institut Technologie de l'Éducation and became some middle school teachers, they wanted to gain more experience and training during the period 2008-2015. But since the 1950s and 1960s, there is this focus on some particular innovative experiences of teacher colleagues with the blended learning and hybrid learning initiatives in research in higher education context of teaching EFL courses. And still those experiences are still very valid, as we have some of them on this particular international conference, and some have already been presented in previous conferences, but they will not cover all the educational or higher educational system. These were mostly some experiences for research, individual research projects. At the ENS Constantine, we developed the Moodle platform since 2013 for distance education, especially for this purpose of middle school teachers, and with the assistance of the ENSET, the École Normale Supérieure of Science and Technology from Oran, who visited us and helped our technician establish a link between the website of the school and the platform, the Moodle platform. And consequently, we had enough Moodle training and implementation since 2018 at the ENS Constantine. The context of the population and the e-learning practices gained importance only recently during the COVID-19 without prior planning of teacher training or online course design, similarly to what our colleague Amal was saying about Egypt. And every institution did its best to cope with the constraints and challenges in order to keep an active, ongoing educational process with varying degrees of success or failure. Some institutions didn't even have a platform or any online experience, so they used the social media. The experience of a lockdown then and its aftermath are now a prospective research context for pedagogical and educational explorations. It is an alternative or a problem solution. The population or sample population that I had consisted of 41 full-time teachers at the ENS and concentrated on a sample of 16 teachers and graduating students population of 167, and we had only 80 students as a sample. And the ENS staff, of course, who were concerned, the director, the general secretary, the librarian, and the computing and e-learning services staff. One may consider why I concentrate on the graduating students. It's simply because it's these students who studied definitely online and totally online during the COVID of 2020, 2021. And now they are graduating this year and next year. So the data collection was done through a survey with 22 questions administered to the sample of teachers and teacher trainees to explore the following points. First, the contextual dimension, the computing, hardware, software, and internet services with 4 questions and scales concerning 13 items, because the technical problems sometimes hinder the process, at times they encourage it. The technical practical dimensions with 2 questions and 2 items, the pedagogical dimension concerning the practices, the skills and abilities with 6 questions, 18 scales and arguments of the population. Then the stance or position, opinions, and evaluation dimensions by the sample population itself. And the most important for me is the socio-affective dimension, which affected the process of learning concerning how people felt during the lockdown and what were their social relationships with other learners and members of their family. Then the most important problem, which has been recurrent almost all the time, is the pedagogical modes that learners would develop after the lockdown, with, of course, the preferences they developed as skills digitally or pedagogically. Well, the cost effectiveness dimension regarding the budgets that were especially allotted to the equipment and of course, those regarding the individual expenses for teachers and students. We would end up with concerning the arguments that are put forward by the population. Regarding the contextual dimension during the lockdown, we have considered to a great extent the type of internet providers, the quality of internet connection services, the hardware equipment used, the space and atmosphere at home, the access to the ANS e-learning platform, and the easy or not easy access to all the lectures, activities, and so on. And we considered that it was a situation most appropriate and more appropriate for teachers, because teachers had much better income to be equipped with the internet providers and the quality of internet services. But it's slightly better quality for students depending on home area, because some areas are well covered with the internet. At times, remote rural areas, cut-off areas are not well equipped. Considering the hardware equipment used, we can say that the teachers had laptops and Android or desktops. However, almost all learners relied on mostly Android, and a few of them had laptops. So it was more comfortable for teachers to work because of their financial resources and very bad conditions for the learners. However, the situation at home was not that better, because all of them had almost similar home conditions. Some had their personal study bedrooms, some shared their bedroom with a relative, or even they have suffered from working in the kitchen or in the corridor because there is not enough space at home. The access to the ENS platform was average or good for teachers, because it's just average for learners, because the student platform overload. When you consider that all the platform is devoted for 8 departments with about 7,500 students studying on the platform all the time, this created some overload for the platform and less easy access for the students. Here we can see then that even if the teachers say they have 70% had good factors of the internet and loading on the platform, it's contrary for students, because many have time factors and internet factors that hinder the process of learning. If we get to the dimension, pedagogical dimension, practices on the materials, we can consider there is a high rate and focus on the script of lecture notes and reading extracts, frequently used by both sides of population. However, we cannot find a very distinctive frequency concerning the teachers and learners correlation while using listening materials or speaking class discussions and PowerPoint presentations, because these classes were covered by different teachers for different groups. And obviously, we will see with the materials used afterwards that when teachers do not have authentic materials for listening comprehension, they do not provide learners with listening materials and do not provide even enough time for students to speak and given a turn or a time. With PowerPoint presentations, teachers rarely use them because they rely basically on uploading their lecture notes and reading materials. It was rather the students who would have to respond with the, presenting their comprehension questions through Power presentations. The language practice for grammar was average and more often frequency for the students because it was their own ability to be developed. The homework submission sometimes asked by the teachers, but it's often and almost always used by the learners to respond to their teachers asynchronously. The listening and oral test and reading and writing test is a disaster. That was the case of Egypt as well. Thank you, Amal, for raising this issue, because we do not have the ability to construct online reading, writing, and listening, speaking tests. From this perspective, we can notice that regarding the quality of e-learning and this education, the majority of the population had a negative satisfaction and negative attitude towards it. But most of them considered that they did not really improve their proficiency because there were not proficiency tests to measure the proficiency development. However, the e-learning and this education for almost all the population of teachers and students have developed the digital skills because they became much more familiar with the information technology. When we move to the evaluation of pedagogical practices, skills, and abilities during the lockdown, then we consider that reading comprehension, writing composition, both communities relied on script, of course. So reading and writing with high frequency for students is very obvious. And again, the note-taking is low proficiency because there were less instructions from the teachers to what to do with the reading comprehension and the lecture notes. Regarding the listening comprehension and oral expression and collaborating with peers, we consider that there's a discrepancy, a major difference between groups of respondents and the teachers themselves, basically because the class load of oral expression and listening comprehension are more than 4 hours per week. So every group is taught by a different teacher. So with some learners had enough time for listening and speaking, others did not have. So the difference of the teaching attitudes and pedagogical practices gave us discrepancy in the results. The oral presentations, the language mechanics, they are frequently used by the teachers, almost no frequency by the students at some times. And again, we would have a discrepancy between the teachers and the learners. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that these are synthesis of the results as they were summarized from the surveys for teachers and the surveys for the students. The also socio-affective dimension on the learners is almost similar among teachers and learners, who all of them felt cut off, isolated. Some said they were stranded for all that period at home, nobody to talk to, and no friends they could make during 2 years. On the family impact, it's almost the same thing, as most of them said, we were disturbed by family presence, or that our members of the family deprived us from focusing attention on our studying and learning because of the housing problem, basically. We consider then that given these problems, then there's a higher frequency and tendency among students to work on face-to-face rather than teachers, because teachers consider that if they have face-to-face instruction and some 50% on online, they would have much more time to stay at home, whereas students would like to have a higher frequency on face-to-face. Distance education and e-learning is completely regarded as a negative, so there is a very low tendency to focus on it for both population groups. However, the hybrid learning, there is a high correlation between the tendencies of the students and the teachers, because it provides much more exchange and much more human contact than the distance education and the e-learning pedagogies. Yet we come to reconsider that after the lockdown, there is still this tendency that teachers focus much more on the lecture notes and reading extract together with students. The PowerPoint presentations increased a little bit among the teachers, and they are much more often and always used by the students for responding to their readings. The language practice rarely focused on by the teachers, but the learners said they are more often and more sometimes focusing on improving their language skills, because there's an additional social media perspective, like what Amal said about Egypt. There are much more opportunities to have Facebook groups on other websites that provide free proficiency developments. The homework submission had the same equivalent as during the lockdown, and now with slight difference, the students more often have their homework submissions submitted online. It's still a failure. Still a failure. I mentioned it's a failure in developing listening, oral tests, and reading, writing tests. And teachers and students both prefer to have the pen and paper tests rather than the online tests. Now, the frequency of performing the tasks on paper, that the students said, yes, we would have a higher frequency of teachers who would prefer to have their work on paper rather than online, because their documents had to be read first, and then they would have to print them because they can hardly read everything on the screen. We come the cost effectiveness and e-learning modes for population and the institution. Said most of the population said they spent that much money on the buying the equipment and had the internet connections, but most of them, yes, it was worthwhile. It's why investments of the administration as well, but there are no listening tests and speaking tests and almost no tests online. However, if we consider the expenses that were spent by the institution regarding the internet and the hardware equipment, it increased from 2008 from 700,000 dinars to 1,500,000 Algerian tutors with the equipment of computers, computer room, and 40 desktops. We consider then that when learners had to use the printed paper, this increased the costs for them. Not only they have to keep working on their computers and internet connection, but they would have to add printing those materials because they cannot spend hours reading on the screen. Is very tiring. So we can sum up to say that more expenses for individual print and administration, xeroxing, space, paper, and ink for the staff. Let alone to say that the ministry is claiming for reducing the use of printed paper, but at the expense of the ability of reading on the screen, which is harming our eyes for long hours, and it's very difficult to come from go forward or backward when we are reading a particular document. The argumentative analysis of all these results that I have summarized here consider that the internet flow, work from home impacts negatively the distance education and e-learning. So we have very low internet connections, and some families, poor status, and do not have enough equipments to provide their kids with laptops or desktops. Despite the virtual aspects of the distance education and e-learning, there is much more focus on paper and script for reading and writing skill, disfavoring listening or expression lessons and tests, mainly because of internet failure and lack of teacher coordination. The socio-affective environment impacts negatively the whole process, individual isolation and family destruction, and also a burden of activities for teachers at home, especially that we have a 90% majority of female population who had a lot of tasks to do at home. Sorry to come back to the... Now, if we consider that because of the above mentioned reasons, the academic community had generally a negative attitude towards distance education and e-learning experience. Despite the skills development, the pedagogical skill and language abilities remain approximately average and low among teacher and students respectively. Despite the individual and institutional expenses, the academic community favors hybrid teaching learning for its practical and humanistic atmosphere. More savings, however, on students' accommodation, transport, and catering are more expenses for the internet. So if the institutions have to compare the expenses they spent on the internet and hardware equipment, they have saved a lot on students' accommodation, transport, and catering. Yet, one has to recommend some attitudes. We cannot go forward without learning from this past experience. We have to reconsider that designing courses for distance education and e-learning, we need to design specific online courses with specific criteria that take into account the functional, communicative, and general approaches and purposes of e-learning by considering the unit design with the pedagogical engineering teamworks of ELT teachers, computing engineers, and services who would make our pen and paper courses look much better on the screen with specific instructional dimensions for learners to learn from. Without instructions provided pedagogically for learners when they are asynchronous or synchronous learners do not react, and as Amal mentioned, they develop a certain laziness and boredom because they are not required to respond. The course design and implementation was experts in online implementation with instructional dimension for students to interact with lectures and materials. And of course, through the assessment online, we can have important feedback. We will then need to encourage the teachers to develop and elaborate their course books first in print, and then every work would have to be rewarded. Teachers who made much more effort to develop courses and then put these courses online need to get promotions and incentives as experts, designers, and teachers altogether. We need to be time-bound by schedule of achieving these steps and activities through time, and not let it happen just haphazardly as it is the case now. There are a lot of efforts made by teachers individually, their own initiatives for developing research, but we need to structure all of these efforts into teams that would develop the whole system. We conclude by saying that the COVID-19 online teaching and learning experience was an alternative to solve a problem. It was not a choice of course implementation. And if we want to develop as a course implementation, teachers and students alike who ventured into distance e-learning alternative without careful planning and consistent implementation, we have to experience from these benefits of the COVID-19 lockdown of learning on the spot, but also its limits that demonstrated discrepancies and inconsistencies regarding choice of teaching materials and activities, low proficiency development, and irrelevant testing procedures to measure the learning objectives. So all of these we need to develop into a much more positive tendency. Despite these negative contextual and socio-affective impacts and personal institution cost effectiveness, the experience proved that teachers and students alike developed a hybrid teaching learning tendency with a certain bias towards face-to-face instruction because of its humanistic dimension. So the affective variables of collaboration, interaction in class, face-to-face with the learners should not be neglected. These concluding remarks, of course, are not exclusive. Other studies may add more insights to the design of successful online courses. Thank you very much for your attention. What?
Amada, for your presentation.
I hope you saw it, because I didn't notice whether you were watching it or not.
No. I was watching. I just we have just deactivated the camera.
Ah, right. That's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Now, Professor Hind Amal Mustari from Jalal Yabs University of Sidi Bel Abbas will be presenting her work entitled Innovating EFL Teaching Learning Through ICTs and Social Media Use in the Algerian Higher Education. Prof. Amal has provided...
sorry to interrupt you. Will you please ask Dr. Amal from Egypt to stop sharing her screen? We still have her screen on board.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Once Professor Hind Amal will display her slides, the access slide will disappear immediately. Thank you. So Prof. Amal has provided a descriptive study showing the main effects of ICTs and social networks on boosting students' skills of the language. You may now have the words to share your perspectives. Hello, Professor Amal? We cannot hear you. Would you please activate your mic? She left. I think she left. Professor Amal? Hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Would you please share your PowerPoint presentation on the screen?
Is it fine?
Not yet.
Is it fine?
No, not yet. Still.
I don't know how to share it. I don't know.
You have this plus on your
How
screen.
to share it?
The icon. The blue
You
icon.
have this plus on your
Plus,
screen.
yes.
Okay, click on it and
And
upload. Click on uploading a presentation. If your PC is in English, of course.
partager. This is, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know how to make it.
Okay, can I help here, Doctor?
Yes,
Dr.
please.
Amal, you will find the cross X mark on your left at the bottom of the screen. X. Click it and then upload your file. Click it and then upload your file from your computer. It will be uploaded.
Hello? Professor Amal?
السلام عليكم.
السلام يبارك.
هل هناك مشكل أقوم بالمساعدة؟
الأستاذة ما عرفاتش كيفاش تطلع الفايل.
الاسم شكون تاع الأستاذة؟
أستاذة
بروفيسور أمال هند مستاري. بروفيسور هند أمال مستاري.
مستاري هند أمل راهي
Yes.
مكتوبة في
Yes, yes, hearing me?
أستاذة
Yes.
عندك صلاحية العرض الباوربوينت. بإمكانك استخدام صلاحية العرض بالضغط على البلاس.
Est-ce que je fais? Oui, alors, partager, sélection, partager, démarrer. Je sais pas
Gérer
comment je vais
et
faire.
partager les documents de présentation.
Partager, sélectionner, partager, démarrer, gérer since it attempts to accentuate the pedagogical benefits linked to ICT and social media-based learning, resources with a special focus on how any content is elaborated and transmitted from a distance to complement face-to-face teaching. And there were many researchers who were embarked on EFL self-directed learning, such as those reported by Sommer on cultural influence and social habits, and those who were focusing more on cognitive and affective as well as behavioral elements that are used in the learning process. There is also another slide from the communication that focus on the digital tools access and technology preparedness. They point on the teachers and learners' needs for digital software training to upgrade their skills for pedagogic motives. And using the ICTs and social media networks at the Algerian University can offer numerous benefits, fostering innovation and enhancing the overall learning experience. So if we speak about incorporating technological tools in English language teaching, I think that it requires a number of conditions. It means that not every pedagogical material can be translated or can be used with the aid or with the help of ICT-IE, which means that there are some materials that can better be handled in a traditional way, and there are others that can be better explained using ICT tools. So the EFL teachers and students acquire experience through action, which means that we have ICT tools that help students getting an action learning, and in the ICT tools with it provide already existing knowledge that can be used for the service of the EFL learning. After okay, that's better. So now if we speak about technology tool successful learning of language learning, when we provide teachers with ICT tools, we do not ask them to do it systematically. They have to think about why, the efficiency and the benefits of using ICTs, because I see from my own experience that there are many teachers who are relaxing vis-a-vis the use of ICT within the classroom environment, and there are others who overuse ICTs. For us, it's great, but when I was reading, I found that there are many lectures that they are better to be handled using the traditional way. So to do so, teachers should be cautious when introducing technologies into education, since effective teaching presents a priority in itself. And technology is a tool for supporting and enhancing teaching, and it's no way a way to replace pedagogy. Okay. So the learner goes through scaffolding activity and mediating experiences to make meaningful questioning, and reflective EFL teaching is mainly based on reflective learning, and teachers should be aware of the power of observation in doing when giving action research projects and conferences and also workshops. So regarding how to design ICT-based learning content, there was a great experience done by Moulay in 2003. For him, in order to elaborate the lecture plan, the teachers need to determine the lecture objectives before searching for appropriate technological material to integrate. And a typical technology-based lesson should include 4 crucial components which are a theme related to the curriculum and which interests student length and also the focus. For him, teachers ought to consider the following taxonomy for technology domain of integration, and which are summarized in first, literacy. It means that we shouldn't systematically integrate ICT in our lectures. According to Tomei in 2003, we have to follow up certain criteria and parameters, which are first, literacy, which means to understand computer communication language, expertise of basic software applications, collaboration, which means to collaborate with other colleagues by exchanging ideas through emails. And also we have decision making. Discrimination, it means to have also the ability to select technology resources and adjust them according to students' age, gender, culture, and schooling level, and to encourage internal access to make further research. And the last one, integration, which means to be able as a language teacher at this stage to create new teaching. So these parameters are not meant only for university teachers, but for all levels, including pre and post university level. So here now, if we speak about conventional versus online learning, we see that after post-COVID-19, there were many concepts that highlighted that were already known before but no more used, which are conventional or in-site learning. We have online learning, we have blended learning, and we have hybrid learning. And all these, I think that one of the positive, I'd say positive, if you, even if we think that COVID-19 was a human catastrophe, but there were some positive points, among them that our ability to conceive learning, especially at the university level. For example, before, I don't remember that before COVID-19, there were online conferences. But this readaptation of teaching the university led also to the readaptation of academic collaborations through e-conferences. So this the change evolving renovation in the teaching process, which switched from lectures delivery to designing course content, and this should be an agreement with technology software norms to realize such a shift. So it is elementary for teachers to know the approaches and methods associated with technology use for more effective adaptation of ICTs in an online learning environment. The teacher is urged to differentiate the methods of instruction involved in face-to-face from those on an inline learning. So, for example, according to my own perspective, I think that the Faculty of Letters at the University of Sidi Bel Abbas should begin by allotting development programs to innovate traditional teaching procedures, and ICT's training and technical supports are compulsory to enable a shift from software basic use training to its implementation in a technology-based learning environment. So, as teachers, we generally cannot lead a conference, or even I never teach without calling the responsible, or calling the technician, because I don't have a very advanced mastery of ICTs and how to fix in case of problems. So it's good to have, technicians and professionals at the university, but it's not normal that we have all the time, have to call them and ask them daily. So online education prerequisites. So for the online education success, we should have some conditions. For example, students must be provided with necessary mentoring and task elaboration assistance by teachers with a new learning environment, even inside and outside the classroom. Why? Because most of the time we focus on online or e-learning inside the classroom, but outside the classroom we can also use the e-learning and also the social media. So generally students use social media for fun and entertainment, but social media can also be used for academic purposes. So the teacher new roles in the this online new era is like a facilitator, since his task is to prepare online courses and mediation. So to implement online instruction, there were numerous questions regarding the most appropriate pedagogy to adopt to incorporate these technologies into teaching and learning. And we have, for example, CBT, which is computer-based training, and web-based training, which indicate the delivery of material and courses online in higher education. So how to design and plan lectures online? So blended learning can have different connotations. It can mean a combination of different web-based technology or different pedagogical principle, any form of instructional technology with face-to-face instruction, and instructional technology with actual job tasks. So a survey in 2003 revealed that almost all ingredients of blended learning consisted of instruction in the classroom, interactive web-based training, email-based communication, self-paced consent, threaded discussion, and collaborated software were existent. So what we mean is that it's not that easy, and we have to rely on literature in order to well master the conception, because we are all, even if we are motivated EFL teachers, we should know how to do things correctly. Our motivation, our enthusiasm are not enough to conceive well done and well elaborated online lectures. We need not to be engineer in computers or very experienced teachers. We need to know the way and the techniques how to write a lecture which can be posted online. So if we speak about blended learning, it's not appealing for it's not well defined, but we have to integrate a mixture of traditional learning with based online approaches. So there are the media and instruments employed in e-learning environment. So it is a mixture of some pedagogical approaches irrespective of learning technology use. So if we speak about social media, we have Instagram, Facebook, for example, YouTube, and so on. So these have been used by all people. But if we speak about students, we can use social media networks in order to update our knowledge as teachers by connecting with colleagues, by exchanging ideas. But the challenge for us as a teachers is to use this social media outside the classroom or out the classroom for educational purposes. And this is what I am actually doing with my students. And there was a PhD thesis that I have supervised, and the student has defended his work just a year ago, where he worked on the impact, the positive impact of the social media use, but outside the classroom by university students, and the extent to which it was used, and the reality which triggers the teachers to well use the social media to connect with students. For some teachers, especially with traditional approach, they think that using social media with students outside the classroom is like a kind of informality. I personally use it. Well, I use the formal ones, like for example, the emails, but also sometimes I use Messenger with students, and it really works. So for teachers, the combination of socializing and learning was also a success. So people usually learn outside in a cafe or in the public places more than they do in schools or at university. So consequently, feeling implicated with technology, young people have the advantage to use the modern technology, including mobiles, to go through meaningful learning experience, and search or find access information everywhere instantly, and make efforts to improve their social network ability and know how to take much advantage of social network different application and their affordance on teacher changes his role from teacher to trainer. This is what Dania in 2016 has proposed. So what I can say, for example, in 2007, the British Council conducted a study on the learning style of young people who want to improve their English as an international language, and findings show that teachers' efficiency in practice ought to be preserved by using modern learning technology to have students learn outside the classroom. And nearly 70% of the learners worldwide claim that they learn better while socializing informally with their peers and other people on the net. We're not here, I'm not here to, as I said at the beginning, so this is a much more descriptive communication, but all in all, what I can say is that technology is good. Technology is a tool, is a double-edged tool, but for us as educators and as teachers, we should firstly know that using ICT should be well done with some lectures, not all lectures and not all modules. We should not misuse or overuse ICTs. And number two, we should consider the use of social media by our students outside the classroom in order to foster their learning process. Well, as my colleagues all agreed on, we have problems. We have heavy technology problems, how to construct or how to well manage platform. I can tell you that I no more use the university platform. It is a very crowded with buttons, with instructions, and I use a Facebook page with my students in order to post lectures that I have learned to shift from traditional lecture to a lecture that is conceived for online teaching. And also we should not also keep passive and say, well, it's not my work, it's not my responsibility. We should encourage, and we should also motivate ourselves, colleagues, and all students to use technology, to use ICTs, to use social media for the purpose of not learning, but for a high quality of learning. We cannot ignore the importance of face-to-face learning, nor can we dismiss the idea of keeping the online learning or technology out of our sight. So we should update our knowledge. We should cope with new technology, but doing with the right way, doing in the right direction with the right population. So at the end, I would like to thank again all those who contributed in the success of this great event, and thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much, Professor Amal, for your contribution. Last but not least, we would like to welcome Dr. Nandan Bhattacharya from Jadavpur University in India to start his work to present his work entitled Alternative Teaching Learning Methods, Using Theatre as a Tool. In his work, Dr. Nandan will be referring to the near future where education will not be for all free. In the third world, of course, and how theatre will be an alternative. Dr. Nandan, hello.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
would you please upload your presentation?
Yeah,
Doctor?
yeah. Actually, I am less powered with technological advancement, and I have nothing directly and specifically point. So I have no PowerPoint, don't worry. Anyway.
No problem. The floor is yours,
Okay.
Doctor.
Thank you. So greetings from Kolkata, greetings from India, all the way 4.5 hours time zone apart from your locality. And let us start. My esteemed colleagues, dignitaries present in the platform, and obviously the organizers, my heartiest greetings and gratitude to you to let me in and share my views with you, with these esteemed participants. So friends, I start with a very bad morning. Yeah, it is very bad morning for us, because you know that bombers are now regularly opens their fireballs, civilizations ruins, people cry out there, and mothers think to keep their babies a few days more in the womb so that those will not turn up in the tomb. So under this burning canopy, friends, we are sharing education and pedagogy, facing, online or offline, blended or something like that. But education for whom? Education for whom? Handful of people like us. Do we think that from each and every corner of the world, Shakespeare or Einstein is echoed? No. Do we think that from each and every corner, each and every child, kid, goes to the school, return back to his mother? No. So education for whom? Handful of bureaucrats, handful of technologists, scientists, artists? It must not be the scenario. Education must be for all. So I intend to restrict myself rather in practical works or any so-called case studies, but into the philosophical realm, into the praxis rather you can call it. So let us start with a quote from Plato. What Plato says? He says, bodily exercise, when compulsory, does no harm to the body, but knowledge which is acquired under compulsion obtains no hold on the mind. Another quote from Stanislavski. He is well-known, reputed, theater practitioner. Stanislavski says that to arouse a desire to create is difficult. To arouse a desire to create is difficult. To kill that desire is extremely easy. That's what Stanislavski says. So the basic fundamental thing, fundamental aspect of education is to create a desire that must be. But what the situation really exists all over the world, I think. But I am not expert in world opinion to give world opinion. So I restrict again myself from a couple of examples from my own country, that is India. Recently, we have surveyed a questionnaire kind of study, and there the faculty members were asked that what they feel about the problems students face during the COVID period or just after the COVID period. And there, friends, you may find interestingly the network issue is the most vital aspect the faculty members considered. And what is the exact scenario in our country? 50% of all households have an annual income of less than 20,000 INR, means Indian rupee. And to provide the internet facility for their children, the parents have to share almost 2 to 3% of the money of the monthly income. That is the scenario. Do you know that almost 50% of Indian population were out of access of internet, but thanks to our government, thanks to our systems, that they could provide a little bit better scenario for the students later on, so that each and every students can join the online classrooms. But the scene is like that. So what we find in our classrooms each and every day, don't we find backbenchers? Don't we find backbenchers having no confidence within him or her? Don't we find backbenchers who end their academic journey without any identity? Yes, we find. I think most of us present here agree with me. But what could be? What could be? Don't we lose several would-be academicians, would-be technologists, would-be scientists in each and every day? Yes. And in this regard, my second part I'm coming into, that is what theatre can do. But before that, let us just compare with, prior to saying everything, I just pay my homage to two people, two legends. One is called Paulo Freire and another is called Augusto Boal. Yeah. So let us compare the conventional education system and the education system proposed by Paulo Freire and implemented in theatre by Augusto Boal. In conventional system, you all know, I don't dare to discuss because this is a very esteemed platform. But for my sake, for my presentation's sake, I just want to point out those things, that conventional system is a banking education system where a top-down approach works. That means teacher to student. While in the Freirean system of education, you know, that it is a mutual, it is a dialogue-based education system. It is a horizontal education system where both teacher and student jointly make something new, create something new. And as Freire opines, this kind of system is a teacher-student relationship. In theatre, it is coined by Boal, it calls spect actors. Spectator and actor are those two separate elements are merged together and create a theatre jointly. That's why they call it spect actor, not spectator and actor, but jointly spectator and actor cumulatively forms something new, something creative. But, you know, my friends, that we have several constructs in our mind. That may be social construct, that may be economic construct, where we are bound to. But these constructions are era-specific, you may say religion-specific. It may work in micro level as well as in macro level. But one thing is clear, that always beyond that construction, if you want to go, if you want to advent, it's a taboo. You will be punished. You will be restricted. But the role of education, what should be the role of education, is to break these constructions and to liberate people. Liberation in every sense. this kind of system, how we can perform this. Freire says is you learn first, then you have to know how to unlearn, and then you again have to know how to relearn about something. What Wall says, construct something, try to know how to deconstruct that, and try to know again how to reconstruct something. So this is the whole system where we belongs to, so far the Freirean wall is concerned. Now, just if you want how these constructs work, just if I ask a question, according to you, according to me, say for example, who is an intellectual? Obviously, my answer would be the 30 participants present here are the intellectuals. But do we think that a poor, carpenter or a peasant or a worker is also an intellectual? They are intellectual at their own field? No. We always use that constructs where we are learned to say that intellectual is only who those are educated as per the living education system where we are staying. That is the constructions. That is why we are constructed. But again, another part. Coming back to the issue, and my final part of my discussion is that how theater can break these constructions and how theater can enhance the creativity inside people. Aristotle said that faculty, passion, and habit. So everybody, every person, every living human being has its own creative insight. But we, society, the system, doesn't always, obviously. Sometimes it can be, but not always. We don't appreciate about the, the aptitude, the creativity of a person, but we always criticize what we don't have. Say, for example, a kid of class 6 or 7 gets 19 English, 10 in mathematics. You will be resulted into a fail. But he has got 19 English. We don't appreciate that. We criticize that, oh, little kid, you don't have the credibility to get pass mark in each and every subject. That's the system. In this regard, faculties can do a lot. Theater can do a lot. How? Active participation in anything, it creates, it enhances the creativity. And when active participation and creativity merges, that produce dialogue. And when these three equally combine, it resulted into critical thinking. And that critical thinking is necessary for any kind of education, isn't it? So what is our task? To create that critical mind inside the students, inside our students. Now let me just share you a story. We have worked on class 9th standard in Indian education system. That is, the kids were 14 or 15 years old and they were being taught photosynthesis. You know photosynthesis, how the green plants produce the glucose and liberates oxygen, intakes carbon dioxide. The kids were taught about the scientific knowledge of photosynthesis at first. Then they were asked to play in the roles of carbon dioxide, oxygen, plant, water, etc. and etc. They did it. They did it so nicely. But my point is not that. My point is that after the discussion, after the play, we took an examination of them. We actually prepared a control body and an experimental body. The control body got they were, but first of all, let me tell you that all those kids were first generation learner. Am I to stop?
Pardon, I could not hear the last opinion, please. Would you please repeat, Professor?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. I really had some noise around, so I couldn't hear.
Okay, it's okay. It's a problem,
Thank you.
technological problem. Anyway, I said that the students were asked to sit an examination, and we prepared a control group of 30 students and experimental group of 30 students. The control group, they turned up, the marks they obtained out of 10, they obtained 3.5. They were taught in a conventional way, but those experimental group playing theater, they resulted into 8.7 on an average. So that's what theater can do. My point is not so over. My last point is that, do you know, after the play, several weeks later, after, the school invited us